Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The restaurant was dimly lit, the kind of place where shadows danced on the walls and every candle flickered like it had its own little secret. The sound of soft jazz curled through the air, mingling with the faint aroma of roasted garlic and fresh basil. Al sat across from me, his eyes catching the golden light in a way that made them seem warmer, deeper. He was smiling, just a small, knowing curve of his lips, but it was enough to make my heart race faster than I wanted to admit. We had been together for years, yet that night felt different. The way he leaned forward when I spoke, the way his gaze lingered on me just a moment too long, it was like the air between us was charged. My fingertips tapped lightly against the stem of my wine glass, pretending to be casual, but inside, I was replaying the last time we had been alone without a single interruption from life's noise. That memory had been echoing all week, and I could tell from the look in his eyes he felt it too. The waiter came and went, placing plates between us, but I barely noticed the food. My focus was on him, on the subtle movement of his hands, on the little shifts in his posture, on the unspoken pull drawing us closer even from across the table. His laugh slipped out low and quiet at something I said, and it was the kind of laugh that wrapped around me like a warm coat on a cold night. I knew right then I wanted this dinner to be more than just another evening out. Outside, the city was alive with its own rhythm: car horns, streetlights blinking, people rushing past in coats and scarves. But inside, it felt like time had slowed just for us. Every sound faded except for the soft clink of cutlery and the faint rustle of his shirt sleeve as he reached for his drink. The warmth in my chest spread, mingling with a hint of mischief that made me shift in my chair ever so slightly. I don't know what exactly made me do it. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the way his eyes had been tracing me all night, but I leaned back, letting the moment breathe. His gaze caught mine, and something unspoken passed between us, like we both knew exactly where this evening was headed. It wasn't about rushing, it was about savoring every heartbeat, every glance, every spark that lit up the space between us. The tension hung there, quiet but undeniable, each of us caught in the slow build of something we didn't need words for. I could see his breathing shift, just slightly, like he was bracing for whatever came next. And in that quiet, charged air, the night opened a door neither of us was ready to close. The candle on our table leaned ever so slightly as if it too was drawn toward him. I rested my chin lightly on my hand, watching Al as he swirled the wine in his glass. He didn't rush his words, and that was one of the things I loved about him. He made every conversation feel like it had weight, even if we were just talking about the weather or some old memory from college. We'd met 7 years ago at a friend's barbecue, both of us laughing over the same ridiculous joke someone had told. Back then, he had been just a stranger with kind eyes and a crooked smile. But over the years, those eyes had seen me through late-night drives, quiet Sunday mornings, and countless moments I didn't know I'd treasure until much later. Tonight, though, his gaze was different, steady, searching, almost like he was holding back something he wanted to say. The waiter refilled our water and left without a word, but the clink of the pitcher against the glass brought me back from my thoughts. I took a sip, letting the coolness wash away the warmth of the wine, though nothing could calm the pulse that kept quickening under his watch. He was leaning forward now, elbows just off the table, and for a brief moment, his eyes dipped toward my hands resting in my lap before meeting mine again. There was something in the way he looked at me tonight that made the noise of the world disappear. The restaurant around us blurred into nothing more than shapes and shadows, leaving only him, and me, and the space between us. I wondered if he was remembering the same things I was, those small, stolen touches that spoke louder than any words. I picked up my fork, but my mind wasn't on the food. My thoughts were tangled with questions I didn't want to ask out loud. What had shifted between us tonight? Why did it feel like we were teetering on the edge of something neither of us could name? I could sense it. He wanted to close the gap, to bridge the invisible distance with more than just conversation. But for now, we sat in that delicious, aching space where every glance felt like a secret and every breath carried possibility. The clinking of cutlery from other tables seemed distant now, like background noise in a dream. Al's eyes didn't wander, they stayed locked on me, steady but unreadable. I had learned over the years that his silence could mean 100 different things. He could be lost in thought, holding back something important, or simply trying to read me the way he always did. Tonight, though, it felt heavier, like he was guarding something. I found myself wondering if it had to do with the phone call he took earlier, the one he stepped outside for before we left the apartment. He came back smiling, but there had been a flicker of something else there, something almost unsettled. I hadn't asked, partly because I didn't want to break the warm rhythm of the evening, and partly because I was afraid of the answer. The waiter passed by with a tray of desserts for another table, and Al's gaze briefly followed him before returning to me. "You're quiet tonight," he said softly, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I returned the smile, though I knew mine didn't reach my eyes. "Just thinking," I replied. It was true, but not the whole truth. Underneath the romantic glow of the evening, a quiet thread of uncertainty wound through my thoughts. We had always been close, but lately, there had been moments, tiny, almost invisible, where it felt like something had shifted. He had been working later, checking his phone more often, and sometimes his laughter felt like it belonged to a different part of his day, one I wasn't part of. Still, tonight had its own kind of pull. Every time our eyes met, there was a warmth that pushed back the questions. Maybe I didn't want to know just yet. Maybe I wanted to stay in this space a little longer, holding on to the familiar way his voice softened when he spoke to me, or how he leaned in just a fraction when I did. A couple at the table behind him burst into laughter, breaking the quiet moment between us. Al glanced over his shoulder briefly, then turned back to me, the candlelight catching the edge of his jaw. "After dinner, let's take the long way home," he suggested. The idea sent a flicker of curiosity through me. There was something about the way he said it, casual, yet with a layer beneath, like he was already thinking of what might happen along the way. I nodded, my mind both tangled in questions and drawn toward whatever he was hinting at. The night still felt young, but it carried a kind of anticipation I couldn't quite name. Maybe the answers I was searching for wouldn't come in words, but in the quiet moments that followed, in the choices we made when the city lights blurred past us and it was just the two of us again. The drive back was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that feels empty. The city lights slid past the window in soft streaks of gold and white, painting us in a shifting glow. Al's hand rested on the steering wheel, the other draped loosely over the center console, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. He glanced at me now and then, like he was trying to measure the moment, to decide when, or if, he should say something. When we reached a red light, he turned his head just slightly, his eyes lingering on me longer than usual. "You trust me, right?" he asked, his voice low, almost careful. The question caught me off guard. "Of course," I said without hesitation, but the words stayed in the air between us, heavy and unanswered in their own way. Instead of taking the usual turn toward home, he drove straight, heading deeper into the quieter part of the city. The streets here were lined with trees whose bare branches reached out like shadows over the road. The hum of the car felt louder in the stillness, and I found myself leaning slightly toward him, trying to read what he wasn't saying. He finally stopped in front of an old brick building, its windows glowing faintly from within. "Come on," he said softly, stepping out and waiting for me. The air outside was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. I followed him, my heels clicking lightly against the pavement, each step matching the quickening beat of my heart. Inside, the space was warm and dimly lit, the kind of place that felt untouched by the chaos of the city. Strings of soft lights hung above, casting a golden hue on everything they touched. We were the only ones there, the silence wrapping around us like a cocoon. Al walked ahead, stopping in the center of the room, then turned to face me. There was something in his eyes now, something that pulled me in and made the air feel thicker, charged. My pulse quickened as I took a step closer, the floor creaking softly beneath me. I could feel the distance between us narrowing, the unspoken words pressing harder against the quiet. Whatever he had brought me here for, it was moments away from unfolding. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The space between us seemed alive, charged with something I couldn't quite name. Al's gaze locked onto mine, and though his expression was calm, I could feel the tension beneath it. I was about to ask him why we were here when he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He held it out to me without a word. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it, the paper warm from his hand. Inside was a photograph, grainy, clearly taken in secret. It was of him, sitting at a cafe table, but across from him wasn't me. The woman in the photo had her head tilted toward him, her hand resting lightly on his wrist. I felt my breath catch. Al, what is this? My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of 100 questions. He stepped closer, closing the gap until I could feel the heat from his body. That's what I've been trying to tell you, he said, his voice low. It's not what it looks like. But someone wants you to think it is. His words rattled around in my mind, but before I could press him further, the faint sound of a door creaking open echoed through the quiet space. We both turned sharply. In the far corner of the room, half hidden in shadow, stood a figure. My heart pounded in my ears. Whoever it was didn't move, just watched us, the dim light catching on the edge of their face for the briefest moment before they stepped back into darkness. Al's jaw tightened, and he took a step toward the sound, but I reached out, catching his arm. Wait. My instinct told me that rushing toward the unknown would only make things worse. The figure was gone now, but the feeling they left behind lingered, like a whisper you couldn't quite hear but still felt in your bones. I didn't bring you here to scare you, Al said after a beat, his voice softer now, almost apologetic. I brought you here because I think we're being watched. And I need you to trust me more than ever. The photograph still burned in my hand, every detail etched into my mind. My pulse raced with a mix of fear, confusion, and something else, an undeniable pull toward him despite the questions swirling in my head. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than just us, and the truth was slipping closer, even if I wasn't sure I wanted to catch it. The shadow in the corner stirred again, and this time, the figure stepped forward. The warm light revealed a man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, his face tight with urgency. You need to leave. Now, he said, his voice low but firm. I glanced at Al, expecting him to react with the same suspicion knotting my chest, but instead, he let out a long breath, like a weight had just shifted off his shoulders. I was hoping you'd show up, he said to the stranger. My confusion deepened. Al, what's going on? The man's gaze flicked to me briefly before returning to Al. She has to know the truth. You can't protect her from it anymore. Al stepped closer, his hand brushing mine, a touch that grounded me even as my mind spun. The woman in the photograph, he began slowly, she's my sister. She's been hiding because someone has been following her, someone who thinks she knows too much about a case I've been helping with. Relief flickered inside me, but it was quickly smothered by the weight of the bigger picture. Then who took that photo? And why give it to me? That's the part we still don't know, Al said. But whoever it is, they wanted you to doubt me. They wanted us distracted. The stranger stepped forward, pressing a folded note into Al's hand. They're close. If you want to keep her safe, you both need to get out of here. Before I could say anything else, a sharp sound, like glass breaking, cut through the air from somewhere behind us. Al grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the exit. We ran through the quiet streets, the cold air burning my lungs. I didn't look back until we reached his car. As we climbed in, I felt something slip into my coat pocket. I froze, reaching in to pull out a small, crumpled piece of paper. My heart pounded as I read the words, scrawled in messy handwriting. It's not over. He's not who you think he is. When I looked at Al, he was already watching me, his expression unreadable in the dim streetlight. The engine roared to life, and the city lights blurred once again, but this time, the warmth between us was tangled with a fresh wave of questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. The drive home felt different. The tension between us had shifted, no longer the same charged anticipation as before but a quieter, heavier weight. I kept my hand in Al's as we moved through the sleeping city, both of us holding on like we were afraid to let go. The note still rested in my pocket, the scrawled words echoing in my head. When we pulled into our driveway, the porch light glowed faintly, welcoming but somehow too ordinary after the night we'd had. We didn't speak right away. Instead, we sat there in the idling car, the hum of the engine filling the silence. Finally, I turned to him. "Tell me everything." Al leaned back, exhaling slowly. "The man tonight, his name's Daniel. He's been helping me track down whoever's been watching my sister. I didn't tell you earlier because I didn't want to drag you into it. But it's clear now, you're already in it." I listened as he explained how the photograph had been sent anonymously, how they suspected it was part of a larger plan to unsettle us. His sister, Emily, had been working for a law firm on a case involving a luxury real estate deal gone wrong, big money, high-profile names, and dangerous stakes. She'd overheard something she wasn't supposed to, and suddenly, people started following her. The figure in the building tonight wasn't our enemy, it was Daniel, watching our backs. But the note in my pocket proved there was still someone else, someone determined to keep us looking over our shoulders. By the time Al finished, the night felt even colder, but his hand was still wrapped firmly around mine. I realized then that trust wasn't just about believing the good, it was about holding on through the uncertain, the messy, the dangerous. We went inside, closing the door against the dark street. I placed the note on the counter and looked at him. "If they're trying to pull us apart, it's not going to work." He smiled, just slightly, but it was enough. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other, and for now, that was enough to face whatever came next. Still, as I lay in bed later, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. Somewhere out there, someone was still watching. And maybe, they were closer than we thought.